Hello everyone and welcome back to Pepple's Potager. So today is June 23rd, 2020, and it's been about 2 weeks since I did my last garden update. So let's go ahead and get started here. In the greenhouse, these are a lot of the leftover seedlings that I have from the cantaloupes and watermelons and the cucurbits that I was growing here. And I still haven't planted my pumpkins. I don't know where I'm going to plant those at, but I did plant at least 6 sugar cube melons and 6 sugar baby watermelon plants out in the garden. I'll show you where those are here in a second. And then over here I have my pepper plants. They're looking really good, and I plan on putting those out in the garden here pretty soon. And I'm going to put those in front of the tomatoes out here in this 4x8 raised bed here. And these are lightning hybrid peppers and California wonder peppers. And then walking outside here, let's take a look at the squash plants. This is my squash bed. I'm growing the Dunja zucchini again this year, and tempest squash, and I believe there may be some zephyr squash in here as well. But as you can see, they're doing very, very well. I do have some squash growing there, and like there is a few zucchini growing there as well. And all these varieties that I'm growing here are all powdery mildew resistant, so they'll resist the powdery mildew later in the season. They did very well last year, and then I expect them to do very well this year. And then over here is my strawberry bed, and they're not doing that great right now, and that's because this is the first year that I planted them. So this year we're going to concentrate on mainly letting the roots grow. That way next year they will do much better. Usually strawberries don't do that well until the second year, and this is my first time growing strawberries, so I hope they turn out well. I have let some of the runners run across the bed here, and I do have to weed a little bit, but not doing bad considering this is the first year. And then I do have a cucumber plant growing there in the middle, and we're going to let that grow up this trellis here. It's called a diva cucumber, and this cucumber is supposedly produces cucumbers without pollination, so I'm curious to see how well that does. And then moving on over here to where the tomato bed is, you can see the Brandywine tomatoes are doing very, very well. They're nearly halfway up the trellis already, and I planted them May 30th, so doing very well. You can see I do have some tomatoes forming on there, and then the Cherokee purples. There's quite a few tomatoes growing down here as well. You can see that they're starting to get bigger every day. Some more down here growing. And then on the back side it looks pretty good as well. Got quite a few tomatoes popping out over here. There's some Brandywines there. These are all the Brandywine reds. They are potato leaf variety. And I've grown the potato leaf varieties before, and they are one of my favorites to grow. You can see their leaves get very, very huge. You can see how big they are there. And so this is the first time I'm growing the Brandywine red variety. Before I've grown Brandywine pink, and those did very well for me also. But all the tomato plants here are looking great. And then over here I do have my blackberries. They're coming along just nicely, and you can see they're starting to turn a little bit red, and eventually they'll turn to black, of course. All the plants are doing very well. I never have a problem with these. Well, except for a few of the canes falling over. And then over here in this bed I have the cantaloupes that I planted. I planted 6 sugar cube melons in this bed, and this year I am using some weed fabric. They say the weed fabric and or plastic, whatever you put down, helps warm the soil up, and they should grow much faster with warmer soil. And I'm hoping that black plastic makes them really climb all over the place, or climb all over the ground. I'm not growing them on a trellis this year. In the past I have grown my cantaloupes on a trellis, but this year I'm just going to let them sprawl and grow wherever they want. And I have put a few pieces of fencing over top of these just in case birds decide to pluck the plants out But these are the only ones I have covered here. My watermelon plants, I didn't cover them because I didn't have enough to cover them. But looks like they're coming along nicely. I just planted those a few days ago. And then right beside that, I have my bean arbor. And you can see the beans are doing very well. Some of them are over halfway to the top already, as you can see. And this year I only planted 4 plants on each side. Some of the extra plants I plan on snipping out of here because last year it got really overcrowded. It had a lot of overgrowth with the beans. So I kept the number down to 4 on each side of the bean arbor. And I do have some nasturtiums here growing in the center of the bean arbor. Some of them are coming along nicely. Some of them are a little slow, but doing good. And then this side of the bean arbor, I have beans growing up as well. They'll meet in the middle with the other side there, and they'll form the bean arbor. And I planted 4 on this side as well. And then in front of that, I planted the sweet potatoes. I've never planted sweet potatoes before, but you can see they're starting to vine all over the place. And they may intertwine with the beans there, but it won't hurt the beans at all. These vines can grow together. And then let's move on to the watermelon and corn bed. Over here I planted corn straight down the middle of the raised bed here. And then I planted watermelon plants all along the outside of the raised bed here. And I put plastic down, or weed fabric down in this bed as well. They say watermelons do very well with black plastic laying down because it helps keep the soil a lot warmer, and they like that. And so I just want to wait and see how well all this black plastic does as far as the melons are concerned. If it works well, I'll keep using it. Not only that, it keeps the weeds away. And then the corn is coming along nicely. The corn I'm growing here is called candy corn. And it gets about as big as the silver queen corn that I've grown in the past, and it gets up to about 8 or 9 feet. So can't wait to see how well these do. And supposedly the growing vines around the corn can help keep out critters from eating the corn as well. But we'll see how well that does. And then moving on back here to the back of the Potager garden, this 4x4 raised bed here, I'm growing a lot of kale over here on this side. You can see it's coming along nicely. Got at least 4 plants there growing. I do have some broccoli growing here. I've never grown broccoli before, so I'm interested to see how that turns out. Looks like it might have a little bit of leaf miners on the broccoli there. And then some carrots are coming up here. Not all of them germinated like I thought they would, but they're coming along. And then I did plant some beets here in the back, but none of them did very well. And I'm thinking maybe because there's not a lot of light in this part of the bed towards the back, so I don't think a lot of stuff would really grow back there. And the raspberry bush tends to shade things out a little bit there, and so do the peach trees. So I think that's probably why the beets just didn't take off back there. And then back here I have my radishes, and it looks like the radishes are starting to flower, so a lot of these aren't going to be good to eat. I did pick a few of them, but it looks like it's just gotten too warm for them, so they've started to flower. And that's kind of my fault. I did plant them late this year, so no surprise there. And then I have another 4x4 bed here. I've got some romaine lettuce, and you can see a lot of that is doing very well. I do have some black-seeded Simpson here growing. And then I had some spinach here as well, but I really didn't get much off of it because I planted a lot of these cool weather crops late, and the spinach was the first one to go to seed here. You can see the flowers forming there on the end. And then this here is the Swiss chard I'm growing. It's coming along nicely. So the only things out of my cool weather crops that aren't doing good are basically the spinach and the radishes over there. Everything else is doing just fine. None of the lettuce has bolted yet, so I can still pick a lot of this lettuce. And I did pick some quite a bit last week, and it was delicious. This is Paris Island romaine, and they say it is slow to bolt, and I believe that because so far it has not bolted. So looking good so far. And then let's go ahead and take a look at the peach trees here. And you can see they're coming along nicely. Still got some peaches on there, even though I did have a lot drop off. You can see there's one there, a few of them right here, some more up there. So we still got some peaches on there, even though we did have a lot of them drop off because of June drop. And there's a nice cluster of peaches there growing. And then there are some that are up really high that I can't get to. I am going to have to trim these trees because they're getting pretty high there. And then the Scarlet Spire apple tree here, it has not produced any apples yet, and this is like the second year. They say they do take a while before they actually produce apples, so we'll just have to wait a few more years, I guess, before we get some apples off of these. And then next, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the patio garden. Okay, starting off on the patio here, this is the peach sorbet blueberry bush, and as you can see, it's doing very well. None of them have ripened yet, so we've yet to try it, but we can't wait. And we've moved it to the other side of the patio to get a little more sun so that the bottom or the back here actually fills out a little bit more, so it gets a little more sun on this side of the patio. And then let's go ahead and move over to the strawberry shortcake raspberry bush, and as you can see, it looks very, very nice in a patio pot. You can see a lot of the branches are hanging over the edge, and we've picked a couple handfuls of raspberries off of here. Take a look here, there's still some growing underneath there, and they were delicious. I will love these raspberries, and I'd like to buy a few more of these plants, or maybe I can propagate this plant and grow some more. But doing very, very well. Very pleased with this raspberry bush. And then moving on over to the rest of the plants on the patio. This is the Atlas tomato, and it can produce up to 1 pound tomatoes. It is a determinate variety, so it doesn't get very tall. It'll get about 3 feet, and then it will bush out. Once it gets to about 3 feet and it bushes out, it will set all of its tomatoes, and you will be able to harvest most of them all within a couple of weeks' time. That's how determinate types work. And with determinate type tomatoes, you cannot trim the tomato plants. Because basically what you're doing when you trim off the other branches, you're trimming off tomatoes as well, because they set all their fruit around the same time or close to the same time, and then they will all ripen at the same time as well. So anytime you prune determinate tomatoes, you're just basically cutting off tomatoes that you could have had. And moving on here, a lot of the herbs and all are doing very, very well. You have the pineapple sage there, we have cilantro, we have several mint plants there. So they're all doing very well. Herb garden looks great. And then these over here in this pot, this is 2 black pearl tomato plants, and these are indeterminate tomato plants. So you do have to prune these, unlike the Atlas tomato down there. If you do not prune indeterminate tomato plants, they will just grow wild. They will grow indefinitely until pest, disease, or frost kill them. And so the black pearl here, I have quite a few tomato nodes growing off of here, and the black pearl supposedly is a very sweet and dark purple looking tomato. And they say also in the description, it said if you put them in the refrigerator, they almost taste like Concord grapes. So I'm kind of excited to see how well they do. I hope they do very well. Maybe it'll turn out to be one of my favorites. But that's all I have for now. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Thanks for watching.